Yeah, I think we are ready to start now. I think you should have a screen showing the program. I'm sitting here in our small studio at the Southern Denmark University in Sonderborg, and soon Horst Günther, being responsible for as a co-organizer for the conference and also for the track A sessions, will join me. What's in front of us the next 1.5 hours is almost 1.5 hours is the panel debate, where we go back to the Triple Helix, science, companies, society. I will not ramp up the entire conference, what happened so far, but for the panel debate participants, we try to create a kind of a note feeding into what happened if you have not been part of the entire conference, or if you dropped out for other reasons, getting some sleep or getting some job done. I'm very pleased, Seth, that you will take the seat here and help us create a constructive debate here based on I think the challenges, issues identified yesterday, the progress, but I also assume that there are still challenges not only ahead of us but also in front of us, which we need to react to. Some of them you identified. So Seth, being a person who can not only get up in the morning but also working with politicians and working with cities, and also understanding how climate potentially impact our life, I think you are the most qualified person to lead the debate here, and the floor is all yours and the team.
Great. Well, thanks, Peter, and it's great to be with everybody again. I don't know if I would go as far as to say I am the most qualified. However, I am very qualified at being a disruptor and instigating conversation, and I think that's what today is all about. That's what the conference has been all about. I think it's pretty fascinating when so many around the world understand the challenges and uncertainty facing us, but how few of those same people are willing to have an honest conversation, have some friction, but understand each other's perspectives and try to figure out where we need to go moving forward. And that's what this conference has been about, and that's what this panel, I hope, is going to be about. I'm really looking forward to this. Just for everybody who's watching, just a little bit on the format. We've got a number of different people and perspectives. I'm going to start off by going around and asking each of them to introduce themselves. Everybody will have 2 minutes to introduce themselves. And while introducing themselves, I would also like you to address how you face and deal with climate change in your daily life. That could be work, that could be personal, but please include that in your opening 2-minute remarks. We've got 4 or 5 different themes that I would like to run through with the panel over the next hour and a half. As Peter had mentioned, a lot of them are based on the reflections of the conversations over the last day and a half and some of the additional challenges that we have. And I'm hoping that we can have a really interesting and dynamic conversation based on a really honest look at what some of these challenges are, what are the entrenched problems and issues, and how working together can solve them. And just before I kick things off then to the panelists, just by way of introduction again, I spoke yesterday. My name's Seth Schultz. I'm based in New York, and I oversee a not-for-profit organization called the Resilience Shift, which focuses on resilient infrastructure. So with that, I'd like to get right into this and start this conversation. And the first person I was going to call on is George. Now, I don't know if it's George in the US with an E or not, so hopefully I'm doing that justice, but I'll find out in a minute. Over to you. Please give everybody a quick introduction.
Well, thank you very much, Seth. If you want to be totally correct, it would be Georg, but I'm used to George, whatever you like, no problem. So I'm Georg Huben from the European Commission, from the Directorate General for Energy. I'm working in Unit B1 in that Directorate General. We are, if you want, collecting all kinds of local initiatives. So that due to recent reorganization, quite happy to be in a big team of sort of like-minded people looking into the local perspective. We have the Covenant of Mayors in our unit also. I'm personally responsible for the Smart Cities Marketplace, which is a remainder, not a remainder, but a successor of the European Innovation Partnership on Smart Cities and Communities. And that then connects also to the Lighthouse projects and stuff I can explain if needed. In my daily life, well, that's a very difficult question, to be very honest. I think it's rather the small things. It's not like big headlining, big stuff. It's really the small things, like trying to avoid taking the car if not needed, sort of being a bit more conscious about the selection of food also. So looking for more sustainably produced products and food and that stuff. Then when it comes to transport, I already said. I'm now teleworking, which is kind of already sort of contributing to this lower carbon footprint also of the EU institutions, actually, because we did that during COVID. We were forced to do that, and that, I believe, had a quite positive impact on the carbon footprint of our institutions even. So I said, rather the smaller things, and I guess here I stop, not eating time off the others. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for the introduction, and it's great to have you. And great to be connected to the Global Covenant of Mayors. I was a senior advisor to that organization for a long time and helped working with the European Commission set up Innovate for Cities. So it's great to have you. Merit, can we hear from you next?
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Merit Tatar. I am a researcher and also board member of think tank organization Institute of Baltic Studies. We are located in Tartu. We are not a very big organization, 15-20 people, but our research has been going on over 20 years now, and mostly related to many international research projects. During the last, I think, 5-6 years, I personally have been focusing on green transition and smart city projects. Also, I am part of Smart and City project, which is one of the Lighthouse projects, working closely with Tartu City, but also coordinating replication work package in this project. And my educational background is social science and public policy. And mostly our research focuses, even in smart city projects, but we focus on foresight, strategic planning, but a lot of also technology acceptance studies, citizen engagement and co-creation. And well, how to deal with this climate change, I have to say that during these last 5-6 years, my work has affected a lot my own mindset and my own habits. These several projects have led to many contacts, many cities, companies, workshops, and it's a huge amount of knowledge that comes from these projects. So I am very happy about that. And this has an effect on individual habits also, because you start to think of really how to act. And as mentioned here, these can be small things like transport decisions that you make not to use the car so much, also what to choose from the store, and really start observing your own activities in everyday life.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for that introduction. Wonderful to have you as well. Exciting to hear another panelist with a lot of deep focus on cities, and also so far 2 for 2, a concurrent theme about the small things being some of the most difficult. Fascinating, thank you. Let's go to Michael. So I believe we're zooming over to Australia now. Is that right, Michael? Yeah,
that's right.
And loved your comments, your presentation yesterday. I was poor Michael, after he was done with his presentation yesterday, I was peppering him on the online chat with a ton of questions that I had. It was really great to hear from that, Michael. But for those that might not have seen that, maybe a quick introduction to yourself, and then the same question about how you're facing these challenges.
Sure. I'm Michael Goodsite. I'm a professor of civil and environmental engineering at the University of Adelaide, one of Australia's group of 8 universities. we were probably inspired by the group of 8 universities in the United States called the Ivy League. But it's a university with a rich tradition, founded to ensure that people who didn't have opportunities to study could study, and one of the first universities to admit women. Now at this university, I'm really pleased, something I'm doing with work, to be chairing our Sustainability Strategy Committee. We have a new Vice Chancellor who's originally from Denmark, Peter Høj, and he's very sustainability focused, and it's exciting. The focus of my research institute is on modern energy systems, and South Australia is a very big copper mining state, but we're also endowed with a lot of renewable energy, sunshine, wind, and a willingness, political willingness to use it to help improve our society. We are just behind Denmark in variable renewable energy, and our efforts are growing every day. One of the new planned communities is going to be only energy positive houses, for example. And just this past year, we banned single plastic use in the state. So I think the state is doing a lot, despite when you look at the heavy industries involved with what it's doing. We want to work with people in Denmark. So what I do in my everyday, I take the train to and from work and walk the rest of the way. I have a meat-free day, and I could probably do a lot more. And I think along with work, not just the local efforts, but it's the international efforts and conducting research with an interdisciplinary way. So working across boundaries with social science, scientists and humanities, so that we approach solutions to climate change and sustainability the same way we have to in society as a team. So that's it for me, and I'm just really happy to be here. I'm an SDU alumni, the first environmental engineer who graduated in 2000, and it's such an honor to be back now. Thanks.
That is so cool, Michael. I heard you say that yesterday. It's fantastic when life kind of comes back full circle. So great that you're here. So Serena, let's hop over to you, Serena. Please introduce yourself.
Yes, good morning to everyone. I'm here for Lecce municipality, that it's a city that is located in the south of Italy. We are partner and follower city of the Smart and City project since the project beginning. And yeah, I'm here because I would like to bring you the experience that we are performing within, starting from this project that for Lecce municipality has been a very great opportunity to start and follow the energy transition process according to the Green Deal and all the, let's say, movements at national, European levels, also concerning the normatives at the regional level. So we are following all this process, starting from the experience that we already activated within the Smart and City project, because we have an integrated energy plan that we developed with the roadmaps, and we work together with the experience of the Covenant of Mayor, because Lecce is already a PAES, a SEAP, and we are developing also the SECAP, starting from the experience of this project. Lecce is also involved in monitoring of energy, and actually just to like few words about my educational background. I'm a construction engineer, and I support all the European projects within Lecce municipality. I'm specialized in sustainable urban energy plans, and actually at this moment I'm also making some research within a PhD. I'm a PhD student at the University of Bologna, where I'm developing like a new process for citizenship, citizen involvement, because at this moment we are also focusing our work, taking Lecce's case study also for try to start involvement process of citizens within Zen that actually it's quite complicated. And another topic that we are trying to, as Lecce municipality, but also within my research, it's the energy community institution and development. And we are like starting from the roadmaps that we implemented within Smart and City, and we are trying to go further and follow the experience that they are also performing at regional level. So for us, it's a very good opportunity to share this information and to get impressions, because I think that municipalities needs to talk each other, because we have almost same problems, I think. So thank you for everything, and for giving us the opportunity to join this panel.
No, I'm very pleased. I think it's always important to actually have a city representative, not an NGO, on the call and in the room for any of these types of discussions. So I'm very pleased that you're able to join us, Serena. Thank you for taking the time. And last but certainly not least, I want to come over to Sebastian. He gave us a fabulous walkthrough of some of the AR6 findings and report. And Sebastian, I have to say, when I worked on the IPCC report on the 1.5 degree process, you talk about over your head. I was so lost. It had been the first thing I'd ever done. I'm not an academic, and it was almost overwhelming to see the level of complexity and detail of not just working with a bunch of scientists from around the world and the process that they go through, but I mean, you have to get 195 countries to agree and sign off on something. I don't think people really understand that's what the process is. I mean, just imagine trying to get the 4 or 5 people in your family to agree on what you want to have for dinner. And there's 195 countries and hundreds, if not thousands of science. It's just remarkable. But so anyways, I'm really enjoy your presentation, and I'm very curious, given what you do at work, what your response is going to be about how you deal with climate change.
Yeah, thank you so much for your introduction, and thank you so much for your words regarding my presentation yesterday. Yeah, it has not been easy agreeing among all those perspectives and so on and so on. Yeah, but my name is Sebastian Mernil, and I'm Vice Chancellor at SDU. Stepped into this position like a year ago. And from my chair, I think it's important that we have focused still on the SDGs, how we can implement this Triple Helix, because I think it's important that we bring our knowledge into play so we can use it towards the industry, towards our politicians, but also towards our society. I think now we have all opportunities to bring the knowledge even more in play compared to what we have done earlier. We have a huge task to do, and especially due to my scientific background, I'm saying this because I'm educated a climate scientist, but also a glaciologist with focus on specifically the Arctic area, but also Antarctica and high mountain regions. So we have a huge task to do, and I see SDU as a big player in this game, both into national industries, local industries, but also in a big.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, okay, I'll just continue. Yeah, so besides having a strong focus on the SDGs, I think it's important also, both as a university, but also as a person with a strong climate background, that we reach out to our politicians, our head of states. And regarding this, I've done a lot of outreach activities for the last, I would say, 10, 15 years to let them know that we is facing a very urgent situation regarding climate change and climate impacts. Yeah, and from my personal perspective, you were asking what we are doing in our daily life, and as family father to 2 kids. In our family, we have our eyes on how we consume, how much energy we use, how we can empty our refrigerator before we go and buy new food and so on. So we take, or we do the opportunities we can also as a family on that level. But again, I think it's, if I step one level up and as a scientist or the vice chancellor, I think it's important that we put even more pressure on our politicians and policymakers, because it is important that we really understand the crisis we're in right now, and but also how we can use the opportunities to bring knowledge into play even more compared to what we have done today. Yep.
Yes, thank you, Sebastian. Yeah, very much agree with that. And again, just apologies to the panelists and participants for the offensive and crude interruption. But thanks for the hosts for jumping on top of it so quickly. I realized I sidestepped the question myself about the personal challenges. It's been interesting as many of the people here on the call too focus a large amount of their time on climate change. I've always, I've been focusing on this for 15, 20 years, and I've always used my personal space as kind of my safe space to like not constantly be talking about climate change. But I think one of the things that's been challenging for me to face with that in more recent years was actually having to deal with family members. I actually, the irony is that I have a lot of very conservative family members, and some of whom had voted for Trump, which put me in a very awkward position with my own political ideologies and perspectives. And it was a very tough thing that I had to realize. I'm spending my time all over the world with people on climate change, but I didn't have enough courage to sit down with my own family and talk to them about it. And that was probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. And now I ended up holding a little Skype Zoom call every Saturday, every other week for 6 months. So anybody in my family wanted to talk to me about why they thought climate change wasn't real or had any other questions about it. And it ended up being an incredibly challenging but rich experience. So it is funny how some of these small things might perhaps be the most important. But thank you very much for all the introductions, everyone, and for a little background on you and yourself. And kind of actually where Sebastian left off, I want to go into our first kind of point of discussion for debate and consideration. And primarily that's around this concept again of this triple helix. So for those, what we're referring to there is in particular how society, businesses, companies, and science and local government can kind of work together. And increasingly, I think, one, because we're running out of time, two, because of how systemic the problem is, and three, how dynamic the solutions need to be to the challenges that we're facing. We need that type of cooperation, but it's not easy. So I think perhaps, as we've just heard over the course of the last day and a half during the Sonderborg Climate Neutrality Conference, what have we learned through examples? And in particular, how are cities ramping up climate actions? So this is issue of scale, while national governments in some cases are still faltering on collaboration. It's interesting to see that I think national governments are starting to ramp up their own activities, but the collaboration between them is still very difficult. So how does the panelists, how do all of you see the progress in terms of what we're able to accomplish, but what are the barriers that you see from your perspectives that you think we still need to address and or remove? There's no particular order. So whoever, I'm going to pay attention to all of you. So if you want to kind of give me a nod or a hand, I will call on you. We'll try to go quickly so we can have as many people kind of come in, and I'm looking to kind of challenge ideas or agree on ideas as they come up. So over to all of you. Yeah, George, please go first. I see your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. I might want to break the ice in a way with a statement on investments. I mean, the elephant in the room very much on the climate discussion and that comes from my work for the Smart Cities Marketplace. We have also matchmaking process, to match ideas with financing. If we look into all the activities happening at the moment, there's a lot talk about funding and making it happen, and we need to act on things and so on, all these calls for action. But then in the end, what turns out is that if we look into the EU landscape for a moment, the majority of cities there is small and medium-sized, and can therefore very often not make an effort to really take part in this sort of top-notch calls and activities. And therefore, it is very important that we address the need for capacity building and financing in order to really make an impact, because that's what we need. We need a sensible approach to upscaling and replication of things. I think that was also already mentioned by Merit and Serena. And that is something I'm very, let's say, very active on in a way. We really try to enable that. And you will see that all over the place, not only in the EU programs, but also in the frame of national programs. I don't know really too much about the worldwide picture here, but I would guess that it's pretty much the same kind of problem. You will have a lot of smaller, medium-sized municipalities who just don't know how to start their journey to become climate neutral, since the capacity is not there. So that as a simple starting point I'm offering here. Thank you.
Thanks, George. Financing capacity, hard to argue with that. Yeah. Any other additional thoughts on this? Yeah, let's go Sebastian and then Merit.
Yeah, from my perspective, I think that our politicians is more aware today about these challenges compared to decades ago. No doubt about that. But still, I think it's going way too slow. The speed of change in the political environment is absolutely not where it should be. And if we look in a perspective regarding the Paris Agreement, right, what we should do and what we do, like the gap has never been bigger compared to what we see actually right now, meaning that our politicians should be much more aware about how they should implement, how they should give possibilities to the industry, to businesses to go more towards R&D and innovation, right? So I think that the political landscape has a huge thing to do here to provide opportunities for businesses and industries to become more green, more renewable, more sustainable. So I think this is like one of the biggest challenges. And then, of course, as mentioned, financial issues, right? All this has to come with some kind of like government funding, I would say, both due to universities where I'm sitting today, but also into like funds so the industry can reach out and develop new ideas in a much faster speed compared to what we have seen today. And then one thing is to develop things, but also to upscale it, not only in Denmark, but also beyond, abroad in a global context, because otherwise not, then we will never reach the Paris Agreement and the 2.0 target. So yeah, just initial thoughts from me.
Thanks, Sebastian. Yeah, the replication is interesting, and a lot of these city networks are at their heart, they're attempting to try to pass solutions from one to the other. But going back to George's point, a lot of the smaller and medium cities where this has to happen don't have the capacity, which is problematic. And then there's this rate of change, speed of change, and it's interesting to see again just what just happened with COVID. We'll come on to the COVID-related lens to this panel a little bit later, but we have seen how rapidly we can respond to COVID. But why can't we still do it on climate change? Quite interesting. Merit, over to you, your additional thoughts and comments on this.
Yes, actually a lot of has been said already, but I just wanted to add what Georg started and what you just mentioned also regarding the city collaboration, because I'm also working in the Smart and City Network and also collaborating and organizing a local city network in Estonia related to smart issues. And what we see, and also in replication activities in Smart and City, yes, we see especially this capacity problem as well as financing problem, but also fear. And I think you mentioned yesterday also in your presentation this fear issue and how to that actually we shouldn't be afraid of failures. It's important that at least something is going on and the steps have been made. And I think this collaboration and city networks, it really helps to overcome these fears also, because you see how other cities are doing and how they are failing, and the learning effect is much faster in that kind of collaboration. And what I really like today, I think it was SkyCorp presentation in track B, who also mentioned that the same is actually relevant for companies collaboration, that they should overcome the fear of keeping things in secrecy, which is maybe more common to private sector, and really share honestly also the failures of this movement. But this shouldn't stop acting, but it should be like the driving force instead, how to turn this mindset.
I love those comments, Merit. It's such a good insight. And it harkens, my time in the early days of helping create C40, which is this network of megacity mayors. We had one kind of business model in mind, and what we quickly found out in the first kind of 24 months is that they were desperate to share their failures. And just like companies, they hid them because you don't get reelected by talking and promoting your failures. But when they had a chance in a private, trusted environment to share with each other on what they had failed with, the thing blew up in a very positive way. Really powerful insight. So I saw then Michael and then Serena. Let's go in that order. Michael, you're muted.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Well, I was kind of in on it and on these topics yesterday, and aside from the fact that I, not just copper, but so many other materials we need to meet demand because our population is growing. We can't meet that demand sustainably. So I think we have to attack it from two sides to solve it. One, become more sustainable in how we use materials, but two, also address the supply side. And I think we have to stop equating prosperity with growth, whether that's in private business or in society or in our own personal lives. Most of us go to work every day. We don't get a constant pay raise, yet we still accept we have a pretty happy life if we're happy with our lives. And so I think as society goes and as investors, we have to reset our thoughts about how do we achieve together instead of achieve at the cost of other people around the world. And one of the things I was chatting with my students with just today is they were surprised to learn that our global amount of petrol is about the same as it was in the 80s. Now, there's plenty of savings in countries like a lot of us are sitting around, but because the world population is growing and other people are using, the global amount of petrol hasn't really gone down. And so, the question for me is, how do we help enable people that weren't born into the same circumstances as us in whatever country they're in, get to comfortable lives without putting our sustainability and our own future, collective future, at risk. And I think this requires political leadership and stability. I think we see the consequences of political instability with the type of issues in the US administration is just one example that you mentioned on a personal level, Seth. And I think we all have to commit to not go back to business as usual. And I commend again SDU for holding this conference virtually and not encouraging a situation where if people don't travel, they feel left out of something. And, just looking at our own university travel, last year due to COVID, when we didn't travel at all, we saved $10 million at our university.
Wow.
Now, for a university like ours, it's $1 billion university. Maybe that doesn't sound so much, but think of how much $10 million could do applied in another circumstance. So if you free up the resources, you can apply it to something else. But I think it starts with all of us getting back to how you started this. What can we do? Let's just find other ways to be happy other than economic growth. Thanks.
Yeah, I love that, Michael. I love it. Well, Serena, you get to kind of close out this initial round of thoughts on this point. Love to hear what you think about this, Serena.
Yeah, I wanted just to add something to the intervention that Merit Georg did, because actually I'm totally agree in the fact the political part has a really important role in this process. Within Smart and City that we started in 2016 actually. 16, we changed in Lecce 3 mayors. All the time we had so it wasn't really difficult. So at the end, we can say that the main part of the municipality that is really driving the process is the technical team. And all the time, of course, the political part is with us. I mean, is like joining this process. But I'm not sure that they are totally understand the important role that they have for driving this process, because I still think that the process is too slow with the emergency that we are living. I mean, we are in the south of Italy in the Mediterranean, so we are a bit, let's say, geographically far from Europe. Let's say we are Europe, but we are a bit far. So we have this gap that, I mean, news and process start a bit late here in general, but at the same time, even if Puglia region and Lecce are like institutions that are really, that they are in the process, but still I think because politicians from one hand, okay, they don't understand the planning because they want the projects. I mean, they want to see projects. So what we are trying to make in this networking that we have at national level, thanks to Smart and City, we are trying to show them case studies from other cities, because sometimes it's much more important for them, because not only politicians are like engineers and architects or urban planners. Sometimes they don't understand because they don't have the knowledge sometimes. So what we are trying to do is to improve the communication and also to involve them through showing real case studies. For example, when Lecce went to Brussels, when Lecce went to Tartu, to Vittoria, they saw case studies and they now know what we are talking on, what we are like doing and what we are planning and what we are like designing. So I think that this sharing, it's really important. And another important fact is to open to private, because public part needs partnership with private in this project. They cannot do things in a separated way. If we want to get this target.
No, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Thank you.
I loved how you just kind of brought that full circle to where we started as well, in terms of inspiring by doing, you know, yes, capacity might be an issue, but you need vision, you need inspiration first, and then it kind of gets into the scalability issue, the sharing issue. So it was a kind of a wonderful way to kind of tie this back all together, Serena. I want to zigzag now. I want to pick up actually on something that Michael was saying, which I thought was really interesting about the rate or expectations in terms of growth. I think for me, one of the problems, impediments to all of this is that to kind of really spring forward in what we need to be doing, whether it's socially, financially, physically, it's gonna require a lot of upfront money, a lot of upfront capital. So as we need to start building and designing and planning for a future that is both low carbon and resilient, it's a different dynamic, different paradigm, and it requires more money upfront, i.e. the ROI, the return on investment, is slower, longer. So to Michael's point, you know, that it is possible, but it's a big change. So with regard to that upfront cost, I'm curious about this panel's observations about how much of that is tied to inaction. Is the upfront cost tied to the inaction? How do you change perceptions about do it? You know, it's just like conversation you might have with your child. Do your homework now and then play. Don't play first and then do your homework. If you do it now, we know it's going to be easier. It's going to be better. We're going to have more time. It's going to be 4 times cheaper if we do it now. Why isn't this happening? And how do we build up the capacities and competencies in light of this resistance to kind of eat our vegetables first? Any thoughts on this? Everybody's just nodding. It's a tough problem, because going back to Merritt and others points, we know what we need to do, but getting everybody to do the hard thing first is not easy. Michael, did I see your hand go up?
Yeah, thanks. And again, this is my opinion, and I guess everything I'm saying is my opinion. But
this is going to be good.
Look, all of us that have sat on boards that are of firms that are publicly traded know our CEOs are measured every quarter. And all of us as citizens who vote know that we measure our politicians in cycles of 2 years or 4 years. So I think people know what to do. I just think they don't know how to do it and get reelected or get to the next quarter. And so again, you know, there's a really interesting leap of faith that needs to occur. And I think that that requires perhaps some of the countries with the capacity or companies with the capacity to just do it, to use a good American, I don't know, advertising
Nike.
acronym. Yeah. So, you know, and somebody's going to take that first jump, and I think they're going to get a bunch of people to follow. But we are what we're measured, and the time frame we're measuring people in, I don't think is enough to actually start any of these really capital intensive projects. And without the notion that by doing it, they're going to get reelected to the next quarter, et cetera, and be rewarded for it in ways than if they just conducted business as usual. Thanks.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be fascinating now to go over to George and the European Commission, because I mean, what you're talking about is we either need to tear down and rebuild our government institutions. We need to adopt longer term planning like the Chinese government, which has 5-year plans tied together, you know, to 45-year plans. So there's some. So George, how would you respond to this?
I'm not going to reply in a way on behalf of the Commission here, because what I was nodding very much when I heard what Michael said on this sort of short-term measure, judging people or politicians or projects, whatever, on this sort of short-term. I think that's one issue I would want to reply to. I think when we talk about sustainability, when we talk about these long-term effects we want to have, we need to also make it clear that this is a long-term commitment we all have to support. And that totally applies also to politicians being re-elected. So maybe a 5-year term is not fitting at all, or a 2-year term in that respect. So in my view, and also based on my very humble experience in this smart cities and communities context I'm working in, sustainability fully applies also to policy. So long-term is one of the, I think, the key words which we need to sort of bring into everybody's heads so that people understand, yes, it's long-term, yet we need to start. So doing it is another very good call for action, I think. It's simple, but it's good. The second thing I collected from what has been said is that there need to be an environment of trust, be it for persuading other cities to speak about the failures. It was a brilliant example, I find. The other thing is, how can you create that trust also on the local level? And then really totally embracing the whole society on local level. And that is the citizens, the administration, sitting in the driving seat if you want. So the city administration sort of responding to the very needs of their city society, but then also taking that role of driving the necessary actions in terms of financing, purchase of solutions, and you know, driving activities on local level. And then also you have the businesses, but also the financiers, the banks, the local banks. So ideally, all of those are working together collaboratively in an environment of trust, because then you do not have to take too much hindsight on like touching things which are difficult or challenging. You just say it and you try to tackle that. And so these are the two aspects I found like very, very much deciding on the success or non-success of a project or a plan. Yeah, I don't know whether that truly adds to your question or your trigger, Seth. But
well, you know, it's interesting the way you're framing that. No, so it's, you know, I was talking about more financial costs, but or you know, implications, but you're talking about another kind of metric of value and worth, which is trust. And where does that trust get put in that? It's a big problem right now. There's a general mistrust of everything, mistrust of politicians, mistrust of science, mistrust of data, mistrust of news, that we have a major global crisis in the currency of trust. And how are we building that and using that as a mechanism to move things forward? It's a big issue. So I quite like your answer. Just it's another way to look at the problem. Any additional thoughts on this? Yeah, Merit.
Yes, if I may, I have to admit that it's of course a difficult question, and I'm personally not a business person, so maybe I cannot make any very hard claims related to these financial costs, because we see a lot in the debates from the private sector and big companies that it's very expensive to move so fast. But actually the problem is that some actions should have been done already years and years ago. So that's why it's very costly now to move fast. But as I'm working with citizen engagement and this kind of activities, then we discuss a lot in our working groups this educational factor, and this actually brings us back to this sharing honestly, and also from the business perspective. Also in this conference, we saw in many cases Danfoss, there was a very interesting presentation from Green Lab today that, these are sometimes fears that don't have a solid ground actually, because it's possible to do actions with less cost to less payback time. And also Green Lab experience already shows that they are generating new growth in green companies as a result of their actions. So again, if we know more about these solutions and activities, then we can probably bring down this fear. And also just one note that I had from my experience working with international projects in green transportation and sustainable transportation. An impact assessment of some Interact projects showed that campaigns targeted to individuals and to citizens actually have a great impact and can have a great impact in order to fast up activities towards complicated objectives. So still, I believe in these engagement campaigns, educating, involving young people, and also involving a lot of startups who can provide quicker solutions sometimes, and not underestimate also young generations who may have very nice ideas, because they are our future customers, consumers, and actually their, so to say, consumer pull that I also heard from today's presentations can be the power to fast up the activities.
Thanks, Mara. Great point about the younger generations and some of the most, the largest group of people that are disenfranchised in this trust issue, and bringing them to the table, not just for the solutions, but to build a new level of trust. I think it's terrific. Just before I go on to Sebastian, I know you wanted to mention something. I saw Casper, one of the members, had a hand up. If anybody through any of this, something resonates with you, you have a question, please put it into the chat. I'll review those as well, and I'll try to work anybody's comments and thoughts into the panel discussion. Sebastian, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. I have a personal perspective here. I think it's overall due to lack of courage. We see politicians, they're thinking in different time spans, right? As mentioned, 1 to 4 years, but the challenge we are facing is beyond 2030, 2050, 2100. So I think it's difficult for them to understand the overall consequences of this. We're talking in a time perspective which is way beyond what they normally are thinking in. And from my experience talking to politicians, it's difficult. It's really difficult for them to find the money for doing this in the long-term perspective. It's difficult for them to get political support, both right and left in our parliaments, right? So I think basically speaking, we are having a big challenge here to let them understand that this is something where we need to look in the longer perspective, and also in perspective to COVID and what we were facing there. Then we had a challenge right in our face, and we needed to react. But now we have a climate challenge, right? sometimes it's right in our face, then we go back to like normal conditions, the weather we like. But then again, it pops up another place, globally speaking, right? So it's difficult for them to get like hands-on to understand how critical this is, because both in time and space, it's not an easy task to solve. So just a few thoughts from my side.
No, thanks, Sebastian. And I want to take those remarks, and I want to pivot the panel to a focus on that. So we've just been talking about the problem, the potential entrenched barrier of upfront capital costs for the transformation that we need. But another cost currency to look at is equity or inequity. So we're talking about, oh, we can't spend a lot of money now because we're going to damage the economy, or we're going to damage the immediate shareholders. But what about the inactivity, the inaction, and the damage that it's causing? Because again, for those who have been working in this space for 10, 20, 30 years, it is now much more acute. We're seeing much more unstable impacts of a rapidly changing climate now. In the presentation Sebastian made the other day, we're talking about global warming. We're talking about 2 degrees, 2.5 degrees. What does that look like? He made the important point that that's based on a global average mean temperature on the surface of the planet. Meaning, if we're already at some of these temperatures in specific locations already, this is already happening. And we are responding to hurricanes constantly, massive damages, et cetera, fires. But we fixed it. We want to kind of recover what we had. But it's fascinating that we want to recover. We don't want to bounce forward. We want to go back. We want to rebuild what we had before and not step forward. But I think through the lens of COVID, let's intermingle here some thoughts and conversations. We know where things have been stuck, what is or isn't happening on climate change. This crazy thing called COVID just happened for 2 years, and kind of level set expectations, response times, inequity. I think it's fascinating that in light of this conversation, we're about to go to COP26 in Glasgow, and this is bearing out right in front of everybody. So, Michael made the point, promoting, rightfully so, or congratulating rather, this conference doing it virtually. COP26 still is happening in person. There's been massive calls for it should be delayed. It shouldn't be in person. It's not equitable because other people don't have vaccines. The UK government has said that, we'll pay for your vaccinations and we'll pay for you to stay here for 2 weeks. It's a big problem. I think it's ripping a very ugly scab off of a problem that's already been there. And we've been talking about it for climate change. This has just made it very apparent in another way. So I'd love to hear people's thoughts and comments about the inequity and/or the equity associated with climate change, and any insights that changed your opinion based on COVID. Who wants to jump in first?
Again, I can kind of start off. In Australia, our borders are closed unless you have a bunch of exemptions. You can't get in or you can't get out. And I think Australians would be disappointed if they heard there was a large contingent traveling from Australia when other people haven't been able to see their families for years because of our closed borders. And I think that's amplified when you have people that simply aren't educated enough to understand nuances. And there's an echo chamber. We're accused as scientists all the time of having an echo chamber. Well, get online and watch how some of these negative comments about, COVID's a conspiracy or climate change is a conspiracy, and if climate change really mattered, climate scientists wouldn't fly to Glasgow. There's a lot of issues that go beyond trust. I think we have to call it what it is, in my opinion, and that is we haven't been good enough to educate everybody to some sort of level where they can understand basic issues and debate them in a rational way. And we can have differences of opinion, but differences of opinion should be based on good science. And scientists know you can disagree on outcomes and analyses, but you don't disagree on gravity. And there's a reason for that, and that's because we all understand why gravity is gravity. And so, it's I think as educators, we have to reach way back and figure out how do we sort educating not just the people around us, but people that, as you mentioned before, might not have access to basic needs, let alone education.
Yeah, it's a great point, Michael. You know, I'm in New York. There's Climate Week with the UN General Assembly last week, and somebody asked for a meeting. We sat down, and in the middle of this meeting, this person asked me if I knew what the most abundant, equally distributed precious commodity in the world was. And I was like, He stumped me. I said, I think I might have said cobalt, or I guessed something. And he looked at me, he said, no, it's the human brain. And it's the most underutilized precious commodity in the world. And it just stunned me, the simpleness of that statement, and how far we have to go, to your point, the inequity associated with how little we've done to educate people that need that information. It's a very, very profound point, I think. Serena, I see your hand up. I'd love to hear what you think about this chain of discussion.
Yeah, I want just to make two connections. The first is about COVID, because actually what we are living at this moment in these 2 last years, it's an emergency that happen in a really fast way. So it's in a kind of contradiction with the long term that we are trying to have as planning and programs for this climate emergency. These 2 years of COVID, politicians did everything in a very fast way, and people follow what were happening, what is going on, because they are moved by fear, I think, because it's like the connection between pandemic and health. It's much more evidence than climate and health. So we started a reflection. Maybe we should start calling city not smart city, but probably healthy city, or city of people, city. I mean, it's something that I think generate some talks on how to accelerate also the process of energy transition. That I think that is not less important than the pandemic, than the COVID. So there is a kind of contradiction, because the pandemic moved everything in a fast way, but we are living a climate crisis since many years ago than COVID, that it's undervalued, I think. It's not good considered at this moment still yet. So that's the first. The second one, I think it's really important at this moment, what we are trying to do with Lecce and with also this movement from energy community institution, is to try to involve people and citizens, because politicians are voted by citizens. So if the people and citizens understand the importance and are involved in this process, because we have now many incentives in Italy for making energy efficiency of private buildings. We have this 110% of incentives. I don't know if you heard about it. So from this economic point of view, people are trying to understand. I think that the municipality has the role to drive and to communicate with people, because they are the next generation. Children are the next generation. They will vote for the new politicians. So it's really important at this moment for us in Lecce to work with people, with citizens.
Thanks, Serena. I love it's a very powerful response, and hard to argue with it. In terms of the citizens and where we need to invest time, and actually building off of another little turn for the group in terms of discussion, I want to kind of go where you just led us, Serena, which is, so we talked about some of these other kind of systemic problems, issues that we're facing, but now to kind of begin closing out the panel discussions, I want to hear from all of you who you are looking to and who you feel are the front runners. Examples, individuals, processes, institutes who are doing a good job at tackling this. So I'm asking one, because just for everybody's benefit to learn from all of you in terms of where you see this happening. And then I get the second question tied to that is if you were Jeff Bezos and had just set up, the Earth Fund with billions of dollars to help stimulate this, what would you invest in first? Anybody want to jump into that? Sebastian, I see you came off of mute. Did you? Oh, or
yeah. If I was able to invest, I would do it in education. That's for sure. I know it's a long-term perspective, but I think we need to educate our younger people more about sustainability, the climate crisis, the challenges we are facing compared to what we have done earlier. And then it will take 5 years before they're well educated. Then they step into different kind of jobs, positions. Some of them will become leaders, world leaders, national leaders. But based on their education, they have a good stepstone to make decisions, to go into debates, and to force this discussion into different arenas, and to talk this up, because we have a lot of inequality in our system, right? And we need to figure out how to solve this. And one way is to educate our people in a much better way compared to what we've done earlier, but also in a better way, as I see it, towards the SDGs, more sustainability, and how we use our money more wisely compared to what we have done earlier. Where should we invest to get most out of our money? Where is it most beneficial? And how can we get more R&D and innovation due to the money we do? So education and research and innovation.
Sebastian, do you see anybody that's doing that well now? And you can't say SDU.
I think like many places, you see small movements, right? You see movements many places, right? I think that people are more aware about this now compared to earlier, but we are not there where we should be, at least, right? So I will not point to any specific company or university, but I think overall you see that folks are more aware about this now compared to earlier. So yeah.
Thank you. And
sorry for interrupting here, but I think the attack we had left a chat box which is not functioning. Just wanted to let you know. So you may choose to invite people to ask questions direct, but because the chat box definitely is not functioning.
Well, thanks for letting me know about that, Peter. What I do, I think we're making great progress on this, and instead of we had some time set aside for me to do a wrap up. I'd much rather hear from the other participants. So I think we'll close out on this question, and then I'll open it up for questions from anybody. I'll change the view so I can see everybody. Everybody uses the raise hand function. I'll call on you, and you can ask a question to anybody you want on the panel. So that's the way we'll do that, and I'll save 10 minutes to do that. Thanks, Peter. George, over to you. You were going to come in on this.
Yeah, very briefly. First of all, I would agree to what Sebastian just said. I think education is the foundation of things. Then looking a bit into sort of my own kind of area, we truly see cities in the, let's say, key position to bring about change. The big challenge is, of course, that also mentioned beforehand, the small and medium-sized cities. How do you actually bring that to life? How do you enable cities to commit to that role and to be able and willing to fulfill that role as an enabler and driver of the process? And I think if I would have enough money, I would, of course, agree to Sebastian, and to also spend some money on that capacity building support, really. And then specifically for smaller and medium-sized cities, because what we see all over the place is that the big cities, I'm not naming any, but there is plenty of big cities who can do that on their own, in a way. They have enough funds, they have enough investors, really, linked to the city's projects, and it's kind of a self-sustaining ecosystem in bigger cities, whereas in smaller and medium-sized cities, these ecosystems yet have to be built. And again, the dimension of trust kicks in again here. So, and I believe we need to do more in this respect. But that's just my humble contribution here.
No, thanks. I mean, that's exactly what we're looking for. Merritt, over to you, and then we'll go Serena, and then Michael, and then we'll turn it over to everybody else.
Yes, thank you. It's actually nothing new from my side, but I put down for myself as keywords regarding like this word to invest. I also have education and engagement. So this is nothing new, because innovation, I mean, technological innovation and investing into, you know, this kind of development is always important, but this cannot be like a empty road if people do not start using these innovations or don't accept those innovations. So it has to be vice versa, this kind of development. And as I'm working with cities a lot, then for me, cities are indeed the front runners of this process, and also they can have their own programs for educational activities, also for including citizen, for example, through some kind of incentive programs. We have had also a lot of good examples how cities try to promote that companies take up some more green activities through supporting programs through some kind of incentives. The same for participative budgeting for green actions, for example. So there are many ways that cities can facilitate this process. And I think a lot of good examples are already there that need to be shared much more among cities, and especially, I agree, small and medium-sized cities.
Thanks, Merritt. And now going to Serena at the city. Maybe we should just need to fund Serena to run for mayor. Hopefully this isn't being recorded and your mayor didn't hear that. But what do you think, Serena, about this issue?
I think it's fundamental. Just to add something more, for example, in the plans, what we agreed with the municipality is to insert in the energy plans, insert like program of promotion of training program for municipal employees. Starting from inside, you know, we decided, okay, let's start from inside the municipality. And then another things that it's also in line with this view is to make a choice of like case study in the city, because what is really important is to have a building, a case study, like a plants where like start making something new and innovative. And we decided to start from the schools, because for example the public schools, the municipal schools, and to refurbish, because Lecce has already implemented a project of like energy refurbishment of public buildings and like municipal schools. For example, you will show a video, because we will show a virtual, like, let's say, seeing within this day of like workshop of like conference, sorry. And what we will show you is the project that we already implemented on school, and that's why I think it's in line to make this training inside the municipality, but also show how to the children that the schools, the building where they study, can be refurbished and can have like less energy consumption through like these interventions.
Thanks, Serena. Internal capacity building and case studies, great. Michael, over to you, and then we'll go over to the audience.
Yeah, I think we've kind of been around the big things, and just getting back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and you know, we're not going to move up to a level that includes climate and the security that provides us if the needs below that, basic needs, aren't met. And I'm not suggesting that somebody like Jeff Bezos should invest in something as simple as food and housing for people, but perhaps something that could catalyze demonstrators that show other people the way, like taking a city and completely renovating it, a small or medium-sized city, so that it's a net energy producer rather than a large user, for example, so that you get microcosms of best practice that other people could learn from and draw upon. Because I think, as Sebastian said, there's lots of great examples in all sectors of society of people doing great things. I think, you know, Denmark's doing amazing things and putting a lot of funding into research compared to some other countries. Regions like the EU and lots of great examples, but you have to find the good examples or best practice that work for you. And so I would encourage spending effort on these demonstrators or living labs, if you will, that allow people to learn from them and deploy them in a practice that fits them best, so that we're in the absence of this courageous push of just doing it, at least nudging it and collectively moving forward. Thanks.
Thanks, Michael. No, it's great. And there's that kind of famous biblical reference. You know, if somebody's hungry, don't give them a fish, teach them how to fish. Yeah, really powerful idea. So let's go. We have a few minutes left. Let's go over to the audience. I'd love to grab some thoughts for the panelists. Try to be very brief to the extent possible, so we can get a couple of questions in, and then we'll turn it back to the moderators. I see Jürgen. I see a hand up from you. Did you have a question?
It's more a statement, because as you told about the knowledge in the population, the main problem is our school system. Because if I see you hear me? Okay. It's the school system. Because if I see my daughter and my son come out of the school, the knowledge about physical or chemical processes or biology is very small, and it's in our life. It doesn't help. We know to interpret some lyrics. We must do something more in our schools to learn about the nature. And the other fact is our public TV programs. In Germany, we have TV programs about nature, and so some Terra X. In BBC, there was also some kinds of such programs. And such things must be provided from the public TV programs. That's mean.
Thanks, Jürgen. No, I appreciate the comment, and I totally agree. You know, when we're talking about the things that need to happen and need to change, it's also the education systems, and that's why I think this Triple Helix approach is so important, because education has to be in terms of what they can contribute, but they also have to be in terms of learning and absorbing new information. Education systems also around the world need to get restructured. They need to be more dynamic. They need to have different focuses, and not to mention that we still have this massive issue about the ability to educate people where the capacity or the need is the greatest, which is in the global South. So there's some serious work that needs to be done in the education systems at all levels. But that's what's interesting about to me, has always been interesting about the Sonderborg project, which is at its heart, it's about education, it's about communication, and it's about engaging with all age groups. And from the beginning, I think that's why it's had its staying power, where other things that I've seen have not. But I totally agree, Jürgen. Thank you very much for the comment. Any other thoughts or questions for the panelists? I'm scanning. Yeah, I see. Is that Solveig? I don't know how to pronounce your name. Is that right?
Solveig.
Solveig.
From Denmark. I have heard you have talked about a lot of reasons to the climate change, but I haven't heard something about economic models and the reason of too many people at the globe. What do you mean about what we can change for getting solving the climate crisis and COVID-19 and new health problems because of we are too many people.
Thanks, Soleil. Those are some big questions, fundamental questions. Anybody want to tackle and jump in on any of those from the panelists?
I think it circles back to education and individual freedom and availability of choices to use your life for something different than, for example, you see so many developing countries are so dependent on large families for a number of reasons, but it's endemic. They have to grow their families to maintain some type of life standard, and that's not necessarily a choice. It's a reality. And so again, this question of development is complicated and tied to whether somebody even has a choice or the opportunity to improve their own personal situation. And until we enable that, I don't think you're going to be able to limit growth in the way that is ultimately able to be balanced by the efforts we can take as humans to counteract or mitigate these impacts that all of us have every single day.
Thank you, Michael. And thanks for the question, Soleil. I'm not going to answer the second part on the climate one just because of time. I've got one other question from Ola, and then that'll be the last one we take.
Could I speak?
Yes, please.
Hear me. Hi, everybody. I just like to attract your attention to the topic which has been discussed within this webinar. I mean rebound effects, even backfire effects. For the first time, they were described for energy efficiency improvements. Every time energy efficiency increases, overall consumption of energy also increases. That's why, by the way, I asked yesterday, Peter, have energy use and energy consumption and energy production in Sonderborg within the Project Zero declined, both declined. And it turned out that these rebound effects are possible also in circular economy. Circular economy is, let's say, silver bullet for the European Green Deal. And if we look to the roots of, to the origin of this rebound effect, they are deep in our values, habits, behavior, stereotypes. So both producers and both users, they prefer to have some profit or to have some convenience. And I totally agree that about the extraordinary crucial role of education in this relation. And if you could comment this point, I will be thankful.
Well, thank you, Ola. It's actually I'll take this one just and wrap up the panel discussion at the same time because we're a little over time. It's a fantastic question, Ola, and it's happening in many places besides just on the energy side. You know, if you look at the urban planning thing, which I've been involved in for a long time, and we want to increase density, we want to increase access to green space, we want to create transit-oriented development. These are all good things for the environment, but by doing so, unintendedly, what we did is we increased property value. When you increase property value, you made it more expensive to live there. Gentrification accelerated, and the people who couldn't afford it got pushed further to the outside of cities, didn't have access to those green spaces. So you want to solve a problem, and you create another problem. We cannot be afraid of that. We are going to do that at a rapid pace based on the transformation that we need. So we need to be aware. We need mechanisms to self-reflect and to radically evolve as we learn from these issues. So, and there's many examples, and similar to the one that you just mentioned, Ola, and understanding the mechanisms that are driving them on the supplied side, the access side. Are people trying to get a bigger slice of that economic pie, or are we trying to grow the pie for everybody? That rebound effect and how it occurs. But I would just conclude quickly with my thanks to the panelists and to the organizers who put this together. Phenomenal group of speakers that you pulled together for us. I really enjoyed the conversation. And I thought it was quite interesting that a lot of the themes that we pulled out from these discussions echo to the hearts of what Project Zero is all about and is trying to do. So if you needed any validation, which I don't think you do, but if you did, hearing from these individuals from their various perspectives about what's the most important in their personal life or professional life, I think really echoed strongly for the values, the principles, the goals that the program and the conference is all about. So many thanks again to all of you for participating in this. And Peter, back over to you.
Thank you, Seth, for wrapping up and also managing, orchestrating this very complex, trying to climb up on all the knowledge. Thank you to the panelists for your preparation and active participation, and thanks for choosing to be with us this afternoon. I think Mike mentioned the short three-bullet word, just do it. I think that should maybe be our guiding star when we leave here. A few more words to this. I think co-creation, collaboration, accepting failing, and also taking the learning out of it. I mean, this already from yesterday morning was core of what the regional mayor, the mayor, everybody repeated over and over again, collaboration. No single party can do it. No university, whatever good that university is. But also it has repeated that the city transformation based on a green platform and allows green innovation, allows R&D, new business innovation, replication and scaling. Citizens are more important than ever. I mean, sometimes we just talk about citizens as somebody being there, but citizens being in the core, our mindset, and also as Merida and Serena also commented, we need to constantly to find new ways to engage, to secure a strong citizen engagement. And also seeing the learning system as part of that. We also, especially yesterday, looked into, in the past we might have called this energy and climate, but right now we are just as much focused on sustainability, on the integration of scope 1, 2, 3 reductions to zero, not just 1 and 2, but also the 3, and also how the circular economy will support mindset and methods will support this. I think we can also, on top of that, add when cities work together and successfully achieve ambitious goal, that's at least what we see going on in Denmark right now. It's a great push on government, because there was a lot of government about legislation, but I think no government can lean back if citizens is active, and no government can lean back, or nations can lean back if all cities work together, like we see now. Majority of cities committed. That's what I'm taking away. That's what I'm trying to digest and further refine. So what did I miss? I missed the social dimension in our 2 days here. I missed when we checked out and had a coffee break that, Ole, I'm looking at you, that we could have a chat and talk about everyday life. But hopefully all the other achievements can overshadow short term our what we have been missing. And then Horst, the two of us being the overall organizers of this, I would like also to have your opinion and also on how we progress tomorrow and the day after.
Yes, Thank you very much, Peter. So I also would like to sort of conclude this part of the conference, at least with a few words. I think it was a fantastic event. I must really say I was not expecting that much new knowledge. Even today in the morning, I learned a lot of new things about oceans. Yesterday, I learned a lot of new things about fantastic new technologies, from materials to solar cells to something else. And I learned also again, and that's something that I said also in the very beginning, that it is very, very important that research, development, innovation, and societal interaction all work together. Otherwise, it does not make much sense, and we are coming not closer to a solution for the climate problems. I won't try to summarize up all the things we have heard about. I think we heard a lot, but there's, of course, much more. And therefore, it also gives a really good meaning to make a new meeting next year. So we will continue this conference series with a physical meeting, with the possibility, especially for Mike Goodside, who gave 2 fantastic index here to this conference, with the possibility to participate also online. So we make a physical event next October. You should also already mark your calendars. And I was thinking a little bit what could be the topics in addition to all the topics that we had at this conference. So I come with 3 statements that I took from this conference, which were there in bi-sentences, but which have not been really discussed fully. And I think maybe we might think a little bit about that. And the first would be that I think this is something I learned, that becoming climate neutral is not at all a linear process, because innovation is not a linear process. It's actually a very complex process. And so it can be very dangerous to run for milestones on a short note, like this 2030 milestones, if you forget about anything else, because you might run into a saturation level, because it's, as I said, it's not really a linear process. A linear process is just a very bad approximation of the real complex process that allows us to become climate neutral. The third issue I think that we did not discuss that much here is that I think it's very important that political agreement has to be found to balance between restrictions and incentives. So how are we going to enforce actually that something is happening? Are we going to do it via incentives? Are we going to do it via some orders and restrictions? And this is something where politics have to go in, and we need an agreement, and we need an agreement people are also trusting in. And I can see this process that is happening in Germany at the moment. I really very much hope that it will be a fast process and we end up with such kind of agreement. And the third thing, and that I'm saying, of course, also because we are here at the heart of Denmark in terms of small and medium-sized enterprises. We talked about small and medium-sized cities, but there are lots of small and medium-sized enterprises in the European Union, and they simply have to be better empowered, enabled, and encouraged to be part of this whole business. We should not look just at the big companies, and we should not give all the money to the big companies. So these are, of course, it's just 3 draft ideas for the upcoming conference. We have 1 year time to make more draft ideas, and I think you will get an exciting program when it comes to October 2022.
Thank you, Horst.
Yes, and okay.
Yeah.
You want to say thank you in general? Or?
Yeah, I wanted to start the next session. Because
no, you should not start the next session because I think we got nice words about organizing this conference, but actually Peter and at least me, we did not do a lot about organizing that conference, instead just phoning around a little bit. The real organizers have been Christina from Project Zero, Katarzyna, who's sitting here, from STU, and Frederick was also very, very important organizing this conference. And you could see today at this very bad event at our last session that it's important to have somebody like Frederick in the background. So a very, very strong thank you very much to these 3 people who made this event possible. And thank you to everybody. Thank you.
Okay.